The night was silent, but not still. Beneath the damp canopy of a forgotten jungle, something vast stirred, a rhythm older than fear itself. The air trembled with a sound, not quite a hiss, not quite a whisper, but something in between, the slow exhalation of a predator that had never needed to evolve. Beneath the dripping leaves, moonlight caught on the sheen of chitin, glossy, black, ancient. It moved like a shadow wearing the shape of hunger, 8 legs pressed into the earth with the precision of a machine that nature built for killing. Every motion was silent, deliberate, predatory, and somewhere beneath the soil, the world seemed to hold its breath. We like to think of spiders as small, harmless, even fragile, yet the truth hides in prehistory. There was a time when the air itself fed monsters, when the oxygen levels of the earth soared and creatures grew beyond imagination. In those ancient forests, spiders the size of wolves ruled the shadows. They hunted amphibians, birds, even each other. Their reign ended, or so we believe. But what if it hadn't? What if evolution had chosen differently? If these 8-legged architects of death had never stopped growing, what would our world look like now, under a web that spanned the horizon? Before we descend into that dark possibility, take a moment to anchor yourself in this reality. If you find stories like this, where science bends toward myth and nature reveals its darkest truths, consider joining our journey. Like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Because tonight, we're not just talking about spiders, we're imagining a world that could still be waiting, just out of sight, in the dark. In the steaming swamps of the Carboniferous period, air was thick with life, and oxygen was the most dangerous weapon on Earth. This chapter paints the world as it was when giant spiders were real, their massive forms crawling through the ferns of prehistoric jungles. We explore how oxygen sculpted monsters, how evolution found freedom in excess, and how nature's perfect predator was born not from mutation, but atmosphere. The story begins where Earth itself could breathe, and with every breath gave birth to giants. Evolution does not create beauty, it creates efficiency. In this chapter, we dissect the anatomy of the spider, from silk stronger than steel to a venom designed for paralysis and digestion. Through vivid sensory detail, we witness the perfection of its design and speculate what would happen if those biological mechanics scaled upward. Could the exoskeleton support such size? Could its lungs breathe our thin air? And if it could adapt, what would that adaptation look like? No rain lasts forever. This chapter unravels the mystery of extinction, how changing atmospheres, predatory competition, and the rise of vertebrates stripped the spiders of their crown. Yet within their fall lies a question evolution never stopped asking. What if the balance had tipped another way? Could giant arachnids have evolved intelligence or even dominance? We enter the turning point, the collapse of the age of oxygen and the birth of ours. Now we cross the line between science and speculation. Through modern biology, climate modeling, and evolutionary projection, we imagine a parallel Earth, one where oxygen levels remained high, where spiders continued their upward climb in size, and where human civilization evolved under their shadow. Cities wrapped in silk, ecosystems rewoven by predators that never learned fear. The line between prey and predator blurs, and humanity becomes a fragile thread in a web it cannot escape. Even in our world, echoes remain, deep in the caves of Laos, the rainforests of the Congo, and the forgotten corners of Australia. Witnesses speak of creatures that shouldn't exist, spider shadows too large for reason. Scientists dismiss them as legend, but nature is patient. This final chapter examines myth, cryptozoology, and the strange persistence of fear itself, the instinct that remembers what the mind has forgotten. And as the story closes, we confront a final truth. Extinction is not the same as erasure. Some hungers never die. The air was heavier then, richer, thicker, alive in a way the modern world can no longer imagine. It clung to the skin and filled the lungs like a slow-moving ocean, humming with a density that fed giants. The Carboniferous period was a planet reborn, a living forge of decay and renewal. Swamps stretched endlessly beneath a sky choked with haze, and forests of lycopsids and horsetails towered hundreds of feet above the soil. Every breath breath was saturated with oxygen, nearly double today's concentration, transforming the simplest spark of life into something monstrous. In this steamy green world, the earth itself seemed to exhale predators. The dragonflies, Meganeura, spanned nearly 3 feet across, gliding through the air like living kites. Millipedes longer than a human arm coiled across the leaf litter, their bodies whispering in soft percussion. And beneath the canopy, a shadow stirred, patient, coiled, deliberate. Its 8 legs rippled like polished obsidian as it crept through the ferns. The first giant spider. It was not a monster of imagination, but of physics. When the air is thick enough, breathing is not a struggle, it is power. Oxygen is fuel, and in excess, it becomes permission. Muscles burn brighter, metabolisms run hotter, and carapaces thicken into armor. The arachnids of that era were not fragile weavers of delicate traps. They were hunters, ambush predators that relied on weight and silence. Their silk, when spun, could bind amphibians. Their venom was designed not just to kill, but to liquefy. Picture a world without birdsong, only the wet rustle of leaves and the faint, rhythmic tapping of something moving closer, each sound layered over the next like heartbeat and breath. The prey then was simple, primitive amphibians and early insects, still testing the edges of land. They had never known a predator like this. 8 eyes mirrored the world in fractured symmetry, each lens recording motion, vibration, heat. The spider moved with the patience of geology. When it struck, it was not seen. Was to exist beneath constant surveillance. The forest floor was a tapestry of death, every patch of moss, every fallen branch, a potential trap. Beneath your feet, burrows spiraled downward, lined with silk, like the corridors of an ancient cathedral. In the stillness, you could almost hear it, the breathing of the forest itself, drawn through spiracles, feeding millions of hidden lives. But the most haunting thing about that age was not its violence, it was its balance. For every predator, there was abundance. For every kill, the forest grew thicker. Life fed upon itself, and oxygen ensured it never tired. The very air made everything too alive, too fast, too vast. Evolution had no reason to restrain itself. If you could stand there now, barefoot in that steaming mire, your own lungs would rebel. The oxygen would burn your chest. Your blood would race, your heart hammering against ribs not built for such richness. The spiders, however, thrived in it. Their exoskeletons were not limits but blessings. Each breath they took through their book lungs was a gift of pressure, filling their bodies like bellows. The forest rewarded those who could breathe deepest, move fastest, strike hardest. Some scientists argue that it was here, in these primeval swamps, that the idea of fear itself first took root, not as emotion, but as reflex. When the light dimmed and something stirred above, the primitive nervous systems of early creatures fired with a new sensation. Hide. Fear, then, was not weakness. It was adaptation. It was survival encoded in the pulse of something watching from the shadows. The spiders ruled silently for millions of years. No bones to fossilize their legacy. No skeletons to remember their reign. Only impressions in shale, fragments of fangs, and the stories written in amber. When their world finally began to change, it was not wit, the roar but a whisper. The air thinned. The great forests began to collapse beneath their own decay. The oxygen that had made monsters began to fade. But in that fleeting golden age, evolution glimpsed a version of itself unrestrained, a design that worked too well. The spider was proof of a brutal symmetry. When nature has everything it needs, it creates perfection, and perfection, by its nature, cannot last. If you close your eyes, you can almost feel it. The weight of the air pressing against your skin, the smell of wet rot and resin, the faint vibration through the ground as something enormous shifts its weight. It was a world that breathed too deeply, lived too fast, and dreamed too darkly. And though it has been gone for 300 million years, its echoes still crawl through the corners of our world, in every web that glistens under morning dew, in every motionless pause before the strike. The age of oxygen was not just a time of giants. It was a rehearsal, a glimpse of what life becomes when limits are removed. And if that balance were ever restored, if the air once again thickened with fuel, and the spiders returned to the size they once were, the forests of Earth would tremble once more, because somewhere in the DNA of every spider alive today, that memory still lingers, of when the air was sweet and the world was theirs. Nature has never needed imagination. coordination. It has instinct, and that is enough. The spider is not a creature of chaos, but of architecture, a living equation that solved the problem of survival long before mammals dreamed of reason. Every fiber of its being is a design perfected by patience. The symmetry of 8 legs, the segmentation of its body, the precision of its eyes, none of it is arbitrary. Each piece fits the same cruel geometry, the geometry of the hunt. In the half-light of a primeval forest, movement was currency, sound was death. The spider learned to listen to the world through its legs. Thousands of fine hairs known as trichobothria tuned to the faintest tremor in the air. A single vibration was enough to paint a map of reality, the distance of prey, its weight, even its pulse. For humans, the world is seen. For spiders, it is felt. Theirs is a tactile universe, intimate, invisible, exact. Imagine standing in such a world where silence itself is deafening. A leaf falls, and every hair on your body registers its descent. The heartbeat of a nearby creature is not a sound, but a wave brushing against your skin. This is how the spider hunts, not by chasing, but by waiting until the universe betrays motion. When that moment comes, instinct becomes machinery. The fangs strike, 2 needles of chitin that pierce, inject, dissolve. The venom is alchemy. It does not kill by pain, but by stillness. It turns life into silence. And yet, this design, efficient, elegant, lethal, was always bound by size. For the modern spider, the laws of physics are both prison and protection. Their exoskeleton, so strong in miniature, would collapse under its own weight if scaled too large. Their book lungs, designed to draw air through passive diffusion, could not feed a body the size of a bear. The modern atmosphere is too thin, the pressures too low. Nature remembers the blueprint, but the world refuses the scale. But suppose, for a moment, that it didn't. Suppose evolution had refused to bend to physics. Suppose the spider adapted instead of diminished. What would that look like? The exoskeleton would have to transform, no longer brittle chitin, but a composite of organic ceramic and flexible protein, strong yet light, capable of supporting tons of pressure. Its respiratory system would evolve beyond book lungs, developing tracheal sacs like miniature bellows, powered by muscular contractions. The spider would breathe like a predator, its body heaving in rhythm with the earth beneath it, and its silk, already one of the strongest natural substances known, would evolve to rival carbon fiber. One strand could halt a running car, a rainforest at dusk. The rain falls in sheets, thick as mist, and somewhere between the roots, a form stirs. The forest is silent except for the dripping canopy. Then motion, the flash of legs, the shimmer of silk, a creature the size of a wolf, moving without sound. Its body absorbs the light, vanishes between shadows. It doesn't run, it glides, each leg moving in mechanical symmetry, a predator too large for prey to comprehend. This vision is not fantasy, it is extrapolation. The mathematics of scaling predict that muscle power grows slower than mass, yet biology often finds ways around mathematics. Deep in the ocean, the giant squid solved this problem through buoyancy. On land, the spider might have done it through structure, internal supports, hollow exoskeletal chambers filled with air. It would move differently than anything alive today, not walking so much as floating over terrain, its legs acting as levers of precision. And what of the mind behind those eyes? The spider's brain is small but efficient, a cluster of neurons specialized for sensory processing and pattern recognition. It doesn't think in words, it calculates in impulses. But scale that upward, and complexity follows. The more neurons, the more potential for abstraction. A giant spider might not need intelligence to hunt us, but if it did develop it, if its sensory world began to mirror comprehension, what would intelligence look like when built by something that understands only vibration and silence? It might communicate in tremors, the way whales sing through water, but through the ground. It might perceive language as a rhythm, emotion as movement, truth as resonance. In such a world, speech would be a web, not of words but of frequencies. The perfection of the spider lies not in its cruelty, but in its restraint. It wastes nothing. It does not kill for sport. It kills because it must. Its venom has purpose. Its silk has precision. Its hunger has patience. Every other predator relies on speed, vision, coordination. The spider relies on inevitability. That is what makes it terrifying. Not aggression, but certainty. And if such perfection were ever unleashed again at scale, if those instincts were written back into giants, then humanity's dominion would be temporary at best. Our walls would mean nothing. Our technology would be useless against the quiet, for the spider does not roar, it waits, and when it moves, the world is already lost. Even now, in the still corners of basements and attics, they remain, small, unassuming, harmless, but their eyes, their silk, their venom, they are fragments of an older design, one that remembers being large, one that remembers a time when the world itself was its web. Perhaps that is why so many of us feel unease at the sight of one, that flicker of instinct deep in the spine, the tremor in the pulse. It is not fear of a creature, it is recognition. Something ancient within us remembers when they ruled the night, and the thought that lingers unspoken is this: evolution never forgets its blueprints. It only waits for the right atmosphere to rebuild them. Extinction does not announce itself with thunder. It begins as a whisper, a subtle shift in the air, a hesitation in the rhythm of life. The Carboniferous world that once throbbed with heat and oxygen began to cool, not in temperature, but in breath. Slowly, invisibly, the sky changed. The lush forests that had fed on abundance began to drown in their own decay. Trees that had stretched skyward collapsed into the swamps, their rotting trunks trapping carbon deep beneath the earth. And with each burial, the planet exhaled less. The age of oxygen was ending. For the giants who had ruled that world, insects, arthropods, arachnids, this change was death disguised as wind. Their bodies, once sustained by air rich enough to feed mountains of muscle, began to falter. Breaths grew shorter, movements slowed. The forest, once deafening with wings and legs and whispers, fell into a stillness that felt like mourning. The spiders, those silent architects of predation, became shadows of their former selves. The fall did not come in a single season. It stretched over millennia, an ending too patient to resist. As the great swamp forests declined, so too did the breathable air. Oxygen levels plummeted from 35% to nearly half that. For creatures dependent on passive diffusion, it was suffocation on a planetary scale. They did not rage. They simply shrank. Evolution, merciless in its arithmetic, favored the small. Those who could live with less survived. Those who could not became fossils. Imagine one of those last giants, a spider the size of a dog, crawling through the rotting leaves, its breath ragged, its world collapsing. The air it once ruled now betrayed it. Its silk hangs slack between dying ferns, unable to catch the dwindling insects that once filled the air. It waits, as all spiders do, for movement that never comes. The earth beneath it trembles not with prey, but with the distant shifting of continents. The very ground is changing, forming new mountains, new weather, new rules. In the quiet that follows, the vertebrates rise, small, soft, warm-blooded. They breathe differently. They move differently. They feed differently. They are the future, though they do not yet know it. In their shadow, the arachnids retreat to the underworld, caves, cracks, forgotten spaces. They trade size for subtlety, dominance for endurance. It is not defeat, but adaptation. Survival happens when a reign ends. Nature remembers what worked. Evolution does not erase, it archives. The genetic code of the spider, the fangs, the silk, the venom, remains untouched, passed down in smaller forms. The body may shrink, but the design endures. Every modern spider carries the ghost of its ancestors, a memory folded into its cells. Each web spun in your window is an echo of the vast labyrinths that once stretched across entire forests. And sometimes at night, when the air grows heavy again after rain, the forest hums with the same vibration it once did. The difference is scale, not sound. If the air were to thicken again, the pattern would return. The blueprint still fits the world. It merely waits for the atmosphere to catch up. The collapse of the giants was not a failure of strength, but of chemistry. Life had outgrown its breath. The carbon that once fed the forests now slept beneath stone, coal beds waiting for an age that would rediscover them. When humans began to dig them up, millions of years later, we did not realize what we were doing. With every spark, every furnace, every breath of smoke, we were waking the past, feeding the air, returning oxygen and carbon to a balance the planet had long forgotten. There are scientists today who warn of the consequences of warming oceans and rising gases, but few dare to imagine what else that change might invite. Because if history is anything but random, then high oxygen is not just a number. It is a door, one that has been opened before. Consider the strange persistence of arachnids. While countless species vanished, spiders endured nearly unchanged for hundreds of millions of years. No skeletons, no spines, no great armor, only silk and patience. They survived the Permian extinction, the worst die-off in Earth's history. They survived the rise of reptiles, the fall of dinos, ores, the birth of mammals. They adapted to deserts, oceans, mountains, and cities. What other creature can claim such quiet dominion? Their empire never ended. It merely moved underground, beneath bark, beneath soil, beneath time. And perhaps that is the most chilling truth, that the fall of the giants was not extinction, but retreat, a strategic withdrawal into the cracks of the world, waiting for the moment the air thickens once again. As the last of the Carboniferous forests faded into memory, the planet fell silent for an age. But silence does not mean absence. Somewhere, beneath the fossilized ferns, the blueprint of the predator still lay preserved, not as bone, but as potential. The world turned, the oceans rose and fell, reptiles became birds, mammals became men, and in every dark corner, the spider watched, small, patient, remembering. The air is thinner now, but the pattern remains the same. The stillness before the strike, the elegance of inevitability. Extinction, after all, is just evolution's pause. The story of life does not end with the fall of giants. It waits for the atmosphere to shift, for the door to open, for the whisper to return. And perhaps one day, when the air once again grows rich enough to feed monsters, the world will remember what it feels like to tremble. Because some empires do not die, they only wait for breath. The future rarely begins with a bang. It begins with air, invisible, patient, changing. Imagine the world decades or centuries from now. The ice caps retreating, jungles expanding, oxygen creeping higher as the planet heals itself from our excess and overcorrection. What if, in that fragile equilibrium, the air thickens once more? Not enough to choke, but enough to feed. The forests bloom denser, insects grow larger, and somewhere in the underbrush, something very old stirs again. It begins unnoticed. A species of spider, once isolated in the equatorial belt, adapting to a warming, oxygen-rich climate. Its body expands slightly each generation, 5% larger, 10, then 20. Its silk thickens, its metabolism strengthens, its hunger deepens. Within a few thousand years, an evolutionary blink, it becomes something unrecognizable, not monstrous, not supernatural, just inevitable. Now picture a rainforest at dawn. Mist clings to the canopy like a curtain, the air wet and metallic. The soundscape is different. The usual hum of cicadas has vanished. The birds are quiet. You hear a faint clicking, rhythmic and deep, echoing through the undergrowth. It is not mechanical, it's biological. The sound of leg segments locking and releasing as something vast moves just beyond sight. A spider the size of a lion waits in the shadows, its body a cathedral of chitin and silk, its abdomen pulsing with the slow patience of hunger. This creature no longer builds the delicate webs of its ancestors. Instead, it engineers landscapes. Its silk stretches between trees like bridges, strong enough to support the weight of a man. Rainwater collects in its threads, shimmering like mercury in the half-light. The web is not a trap, it is territory, a network that marks ownership, a living extension of instinct and intelligence intertwined. Human civilization, unprepared for such precision, begins to notice, not through sightings, but through disappearances. Logging camps in the Amazon go silent. Drones sent to investigate return with distorted footage, glints of motion, flashes of eyes, patterns that seem deliberate. Biologists dismiss them as misreadings, heat distortions, shadows. But shadows do not move against the wind. If this vision seems far-fetched, remember, nature does not create for our comfort. The spider's design is endlessly adaptive. Its silk could evolve to sense vibration across miles, acting as a neural web, an external nervous system. Imagine one creature spanning an entire valley, feeling every movement in its domain through strands thinner than hair, yet strong enough to stop a bullet. To it, the forest is not environment, it is body. Every leaf, every gust of wind, every raindrop is felt. You would not see it until you were already inside it. The spider would not chase, and it never has. It would simply wait for your pulse to betray you, for your breath to disturb its world. When it struck, it would not be rage but reflex, the same ancient precision honed in the Carboniferous dark. To us, it would feel like fate, swift, soundless, certain. But the web would not stop at the forest. As cities push deeper into wild terrain, the boundary between civilization and predation begins to blur. Power lines, bridges, and skyscrapers all mimic the geometry of webs. To a creature of vibration, our infrastructure would feel like invitation. Perhaps it would adapt to concrete as easily as to trees, draping cities in silk that glistens under neon light. You wake one morning to find threads stretching between rooftops. You brush one as you pass, and for an instant, something far away knows where you are. Governments would deny it, of course. The footage, the sightings, the patterns, all labeled hoaxes, hysteria. Yet ecosystems shift quietly beneath us. Bird populations plummet. Small mammals vanish. The balance adjusts without notice, until one day, the silence becomes too perfect. You begin to realize the world doesn't feel empty because nothing is there. It feels empty because something else now owns the noise. Some scientists have dared to model such a world. Their projections are chilling. In an oxygen-rich biosphere with elevated humidity and temperature stability, arachnid gigantism is not impossible, merely improbable. But improbability has never stopped evolution. It only slows it down. A few genetic mutations, a slightly altered respiratory system, a few million years of patience, and the spider could return to its ancestral throne. If it did, humanity would not disappear overnight. We would adapt, as we always have. We would light our cities brighter, build our walls higher, invent new chemicals to repel the But the spider does not fear light, or walls, or chemicals. It has survived fire, radiation, drought, and extinction events that erased empires of flesh and bone. We build against it. It waits beneath us. And so, in this imagined future, the world grows quiet again. Not barren, just balanced, differently. Forests thick with webs shimmer beneath oxygen-rich skies. Rivers run clear through silk canyons. The cities we once called home become habitats, relics draped in silver. Humanity retreats to cold regions, to mountains and islands, where the air is thin and the webs cannot form. Civilization does not end. It contracts. From space, Earth glows differently now. Patches of white shimmer across continents like scars, moving with the wind. Webs so large they alter cloud patterns, and in the dark heart of each one, a shape moves slowly, patient and eternal. It is not a monster. It is simply what life becomes when it remembers how to breathe deeply again. The web was never meant to be prison or weapon. It is structure, order, nature's handwriting across chaos, and perhaps in that design lies a kind of peace. But peace is a matter of perspective. To the spider, this world is finally perfect again. To us, it is a nightmare made logical, because evolution never stops. It only pauses, and sometimes it remembers its favorite creation. Even now, beneath our feet, the world hums with secrets. The soil remembers everything. The bones of empires, the roots of vanished forests, the breath of creatures that once darkened the sky. If you listen long enough, in the right silence, the kind that feels alive, you might hear it. Not a sound, but a rhythm. Slow, deliberate, patient, like the pulse of something vast buried beneath the centuries, waiting. In caves untouched by light, where humidity drips from stone and air moves like breath, shadows still twitch with ancient geometry. There are places on this planet where the walls themselves seem to move, where explorers claim to have seen eyes glinting from ceilings 20 feet above, and strands of silk, thicker than rope, trailing into darkness. In Laos, they speak of Ni Thep, the forest goddess with 8 arms who devours men in silence. In the Congo, hunters whisper of Jabba Fofi, the giant ground spider said to weave tunnels wide enough for a child to crawl through. In the deserts of Australia, elders tell of the Mimi, spirits who vanish into cracks in the earth, leaving behind only webbed traces on stone. Science calls these stories myths, cultural echoes of instinctive fear. But every myth begins somewhere real. Deep within each legend lies a fossilized truth, buried like an egg sac beneath layers of time. The spider has always haunted the edge of human imagination, not as predator alone, but as symbol, weaver, watcher, keeper of fate. In many cultures, the web is the first architecture, the original blueprint of creation. Yet behind that beauty hides something older than myth, the memory of scale. Perhaps humanity does not fear spiders because of their form, but because of what they represent. A time when we were not the apex, when something else ruled without mercy or morality. Our nightmares, after all, are not inventions. They are fossils of the mind. Imagine an archaeologist, somewhere in the thick of the Amazon, brushing away layers of silt to reveal the impossible. Impressions of fangs wider than his palm, a pattern of leg joints preserved in petrified clay. The discovery is dismissed as misinterpretation, of course. The remains of a plant, a collapsed burrow, erosion. Yet deep down, he feels something irrational, the pressure of being watched by the forest itself. When he leaves, he doesn't notice the faint tremor behind him or the thin line of silk clinging to his boot. These stories circulate quietly among those who study the unseen corners of the earth. Spelunkers, oil drillers, explorers. They describe webs that defy explanation, tensile strength far beyond known species, patterns too vast to belong to something small. Yet no body is ever found, only absence, only silence. It is easy to dismiss, easier still to forget, but nature does not forget. It only hides what we are not yet ready to face. Beneath jungles and mountains, beneath permafrost and coral, the archives of evolution wait. DNA does not vanish. It lingers, dormant, coded like prophecy. And in the right conditions, old blueprint lies in its simplicity. It needs no warmth, no social structure, no companionship. It can sleep through scarcity, molt through centuries, wait through extinction. Even now, certain tarantula species can remain motionless for years, conserving every heartbeat. The fossil record tells us that the oldest known spider lineage, Megarachne cervinae, survived environmental collapse before. Who is to say it could not again? Maybe the legends of the Congo, the whispers from the caves, the disappearances in the jungles are not proof of survival, but of remembrance, evolution dreaming aloud. The earth, after all, has a habit of repetition. What has been once can be again. There is a kind of poetry in that, a symmetry too precise to ignore. The spider does not simply hunt, it balances, it keeps order in the chaos of life. It is patient when the world is not. When everything else falls apart, it rebuilds. Perhaps that is why it endures, not as ruler, but as witness. Still, the question lingers. What if those ancient architects of silence are not entirely gone? What if somewhere beneath layers of rock and memory, the last of them still stirs? Not in malice, not in hunger, but in instinct. The air is warming, the oxygen is rising, the forests are returning. The stage, once again, is being set. You might laugh at that, call it fantasy. But before you do, remember this. Every age of terror began as disbelief. Before the first dinosaur bone was named, people spoke of dragons. Before we found fossils of megalodon, sailors told tales of sea demons that swallowed ships whole. Truth and legend are not opposites. They are generations apart. One day, when the air thickens again and the nights hum with too much life, you might feel a vibration beneath your floor, faint, rhythmic, patient. You'll tell yourself it's the subway, or the pipes, or the heartbeat in your ears. You'll be right in a way, because the earth has a pulse. It always has, and if you listen closely enough, it sounds like legs moving through soil. The echo is faint now, buried beneath centuries of noise, but the soil remembers, the world remembers, and somewhere, so do they. Because extinction is not death, it's a pause, and nature always presses play. The forest grows quiet, the soil breathes, the web glistens under the first light of dawn. But as one story ends, another begins, one whispered in the jungles, told by those who swear the shadow shadows still move. If you think the giants are gone, think again. Watch our next story. When prehistoric spiders ruled the earth, the forgotten giants.